Thank you, everyone, for coming to this breakout session. We have Wardley Mapping, an interactive workshop to map strategic planning by Phil Jochimson. There's going to be time at the end for Q&A. If you're virtual, go ahead and just drop the questions in the chat. We'll take care of those a little bit later. Without further ado, Wardley Mapping, an interactive workshop to map strategic planning.
Hey, folks. I'm going to try standing up here. Let's see if the camera follows me over here or not. Not yet. If I work my arms. Okay, we're gonna work on that part. Okay, so the general structure again, we're gonna go over some presentation. Yeah, we'll see if we can tweak that. Should be good. Should be good. Okay. All right. Back here it is. Okay, so the whole point of this is that I want to introduce this idea, this concept of Wardley mapping, and then we're going to specifically get into actually doing this, and that's going to be the whole point. All right. Yep, it's just going to follow Parker the whole time. This is brilliant. So anyways, technical difficulties. This is always good fun.
Interactive part.
What was the clicking on the video thing to change that? All right. So if you can get the video for that would be awesome.
The video is only going to show it's automatic, so whoever's moving. So if you go that way.
All right. So I'm going to tell everybody else to leave the front then.
Yep.
That's fine. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So I ran into this concept called Wardley mapping a number of years ago. I've already actually done a bunch of IT professional conferences, presentations on this, but I didn't end up doing the how, like, let's actually have people do stuff, right? All right. Here to work. So many.
Try now.
All right, awesome. Okay, so we've got, there's some general ground rules, and again, we're gonna be intentional. I'm gonna give you an example. I'm gonna quick rip through how to actually do this, and then we're gonna stop the recording and actually have practice. Now in person, you're gonna have Post-it notes. You have pieces of paper you can write on. I put the links in earlier, and we can get those reposted if we need to into the chat for the documents. So if you're doing, if you're playing along at home, cool. And you can use these later as well. So ground rules. A lot of stuff here. Again, we're going to stop recording it at some point so people can go through the things. I like the one about the don't put, put the idea on the table, don't get on the table. Good point. Expect unfinished business because we're not going to have enough time to do everything here. I did a presentation on this earlier in the year and I called it 15 minutes. And of course, it took way more than 15 minutes. So we'll see how we do. So first thing, getting clear on purpose. This is the first document, the one about the 3 strategic areas. So we have these big questions, rhetorical. It's like, why is strategy useful? Why is execution useful? And then this is pretty much the Dwight D. Eisenhower thing about how plans are worthless, but planning is everything. So this is part of the planning, part of the trying to discover what might we need to consider, what might we don't, what do we not consider, what information do we need to go find out. All right, so the worksheet then, this thing, we're gonna give you about 3 minutes. So I assume also that you came to this session because you have something that seemed like if you could apply some more strategy to it, it might go better, right? If you could get more clarity, if you could get more confidence about something or more strategic insights about a few areas, I assume that's why you're here. If you're not, that's fine. Just you'll have something later this week that'll probably come up, right? So I'm going to give you folks 3 minutes, take a look at that worksheet, and write down those 3 things. So 3 areas that you need. I will give you suggestions if you do not have any of your own, but like what? How is AI going to affect my job? Right? Okay. So if you get done with that first part about picking out those 3 areas, again, you can move ahead to the next 2, which are picking out what's going to have the biggest payoff. I want you to rank them, right? Just which one's going to have the biggest payoff. And then that last column, of course, is whether you think you need to narrow your options because there's too many things, or if you need to expand, right? If you can only see one thing right now and that's what you're stuck on, expanding is what you need. If you've got 40 ways to implement something, you need a much more narrow focus with that.
For the question 3, all of a sudden, whether your explanation just changed my understanding. Are you asking about like more options for area for the first column, or within our row? Say if I put IT Federation down.
Yes.
Number 1. Is that too many options in terms of solution to the problem, to that particular problem?
If you've got, so IT Federation, if you need to narrow the amount of options, then I want you to write down narrow. Like if you've got way too many things to look at.
Options for solutions to the problem.
Or strategic approaches. If there's 50 ways to implement IT Federation, then that's too many, right? You can't do all 50. You need to have something more narrow. Now, if you were handed a regulation like HIPAA or something like that, you might end up with like 1 or 2 paths, and you might need some other ideas besides that, right? Those 2 things. So, and the reason I'm asking you to do this is that in some cases, we're going to have, there's just too many options and you need fewer options. And the other one, which is more of kind of like your personal mental roadblock of, if I think there's only one way this can be done, I need more ideas either from different people, or I need a different perspective, et cetera. And that's part of what's going to happen with this tool analysis, because it's a conversation device with your team about what do we want to do. So hopefully that made sense. Did you have something or? Okay. I'll give you folks maybe another minute to do that ranking, and then whether or not, again, you think you either need to narrow your options or if you need to expand your options. Like, what are you trying to learn, right? All right, so I'm going to bring us back again. That was kind of our strategic intent, right? So now the rest of the time, we're going to focus on, when I say some of these things, think about how you might apply, what I'm going over to the areas that you have there. So I'll give you this example. This is a little bit backwards because, again, this is a full-fledged example, and I'm going to just go through like what I read out of this example. So using open source as a weapon, which is an interesting concept. This one specifically has to do with going back to basically when ChatGPT came out and all the fun that happened there. There was a quote from an internal Google memo about, "We have no moat, but neither does OpenAI," which is 100% true, because it didn't take more than a week or 2 before we started seeing people build things on top of it to make those models incredibly more effective. And I think they gave that great example of applying LoRa training, which made the thing way more effective, costs like $100, as opposed to the cost to let's go back and train a completely new model from scratch, which was a considerably bigger thing. So Meta, they say that they open sourced the Llama models. Again, it's not actually open source, but it is open in the regard that you can know what the weights are and that you have access to it, you build on top of it, et cetera. I can't do that really with ChatGPT, the most current version, whatever that is today, because it's closed, right? And so open models mean everybody could be building on your thing, as opposed to you can only build on your proprietary thing, right? And that we've seen this a number of times, right? Like why is Linux as an operating system, successful? A huge part of it is because it didn't require a licensing fee to start with, right? And we have a number of examples in academia about that as well. So that was one full-fledged example. The couple other things just from this diagram, again, that I take away too, is that The stuff that's further, and we'll go into this in a second, but the stuff that's further down, like any part of this diagram could move. Over time, stuff goes from left to being completely custom. So again, first person who trains a large scale LLM might be a completely custom thing. Over time, it's going to become incredibly commodity, and you folks have already witnessed that as well, right? A 10 billion parameter model. The first one to make it, totally custom. Can I make one on my laptop this afternoon if I felt like it? Probably, right? Now it's very easy. There's instructions to do it, etc. It's pretty easy to get to, and that's what happens with everything over time. So we'll get a little bit later about the bit about this is how you can predict the future. You won't know when the future is going to arrive, but you can know if it's continuing to add value, that it will happen. Okay, so building the foundation, this is the part where I'm gonna go a little bit fast because the important part is we want you to actually start getting some of this stuff written down for the exercise itself, right? If I just tell you this is a neat idea, and you just listen to it, you are going to get zero value out of it. Doing the exercise with, as you've identified, possible 3 areas that are important for you to have some more strategic information about, it's gonna be a really good way to go. So the whole thing with this mapping, that other things just like Porter's 5 forces, SWOT analysis, et cetera, is it doesn't give you the best view of strategic situational awareness. So we start with, of course, understanding what you have. So that's perceive, can I see things? Then we move to, of course, understanding. And then some of this bit about evolution that I was talking about with the previous diagram is the bit about what do we predict is going to happen next, or which part of that graph can we influence to have something change. We're doing this individually right now, but the idea is that you would want to be taking this back to your group so you can have a shared participant model about this. So you understand the whole group comes together and has a conversation about, is this a custom piece for us? Is this, can we buy it from someone and it's a commodity? Is it something the customers even care about, right? If the customer doesn't see it, maybe it doesn't matter whether it's custom or it's commodity. And then, right, the model then will allow us to see our possible futures and how different actions might change the future. And that is going to be, this is a diagram that you folks will be able to look at on the slides if we make those available. The general idea, though, is that if the whole team updates their mental model at the same time, so you have a conversation about something at the same time, you're all going to at least be in the same boat thinking about whatever it is that we've got going on. Again, not enough time to explain everything. This is contrary to some other approaches, this is incredibly scalable. You can have a 15-minute conversation with your team and you only put 4 Post-it notes on the wall and actually still get something valuable out of it. You do not need to do 50 Post-it notes over a 2-day session or something like that. You can have something pretty quick happen. And then, as I said before, evolution, we don't know how long it takes, just that it does happen if the thing if the thing continues to add value. All right, so let's talk about the components. The second link, the second link, so the one that just has, it says value chain, it's kind of, there's an XY axis on there, right? So we're gonna go over a little bit on this. There are components that we put on here that make up the value chain. The customer is always at the top, so whoever the consumer is. And again, depends on your context, right? If I, as a staff member at UW-Madison, I am a customer of someone who, got me a laptop, right? But I'm not the only customer, right? So someone had to go buy the laptop from Apple or had to get it from somewhere else. So whatever your context is, again, back to that, what area are you looking at? There's going to be some kind of an item or a service that people are receiving, and then there are just various components that could potentially make up how would you get that thing. I'm going to give you an example here for, I believe it is, okay, we'll get this in 1 second. Okay, and then the axes. I'll try to be clear about this. The stuff that's further up to the top is closer to the customer so they can see it. They're gonna care if you swap it out for something that's either better or worse, right? So a lot of like website redesigns, if they only make the thing look nicer, sometimes the customers are like, wow, this is so much better. Maybe, right? But if I swap whether I'm using Windows or Linux servers all the way to the bottom, if I'm changing whether or not I'm using, like electricity from provider A versus provider B, my customer who goes to a website has no idea what kind of power source I have. And that doesn't change how the website functions, right? So more visible is closer to the customer, less visible is further away. And that just helps the whole team get clear on what things our customers might even care about. if they can't see it, they may not care if we make a massive improvement in it, right? If I custom compile an email server for myself, for my department, maybe nobody cares because it's not any different than the one I would have gotten already out of Office 365, as one example. But maybe, maybe there's something unique in there, and that's one of the ways that you can call this out. Like maybe not the entire email server is unique. And then again, from left to right, we've got Genesis or custom kind of on the left, and then product and commodity and utility on the right. Everything starts as Genesis. The first device that actually ran on electricity was incredibly custom. Right now, we take it for granted. I get the exact same thing. I get standardized output from a wall outlet right now. So that happens over time. We can't predict how long it's going to take. All right, so we drop the components in. We have customer at the top. There's components. That's step one. Then we get the next one, my example with toast, right? Someone's hungry. They want toast. It involves bread, a toaster, and some electricity. Nothing surprising there, I don't think. And back to the point, that is clearly not all of the detail that could possibly go into this, but it's enough to have a conversation. Oh, I forgot things. What about butter and jam, right? Okay, so we add some additional components. Maybe they sit in a different place on there. And then we move stuff around to indicate what level of evolution those things have in our context, right? I think some examples I gave in the previous version of this talk, in some cases, the bread might be incredibly custom, right? If I get a handmade loaf of bread, a very specific type from someone at the farmer's market, that might have qualities that I care about a lot, and it might be custom, right? Because it was handmade. Also, I could get bread from a grocery store that was definitely out of some kind of a factory, and maybe that was good enough for most days, but it's not good for like a fancy Sunday dinner. I don't know, right? And it's all about context. But our group could talk about, do we care about the bread or not, right? Is in this case, butter and jam is apparently handmade, right? But the electricity is not handmade. It's already a utility. The toaster, I am not making a toaster from scratch. Also, I'm probably not making a knife from scratch, but people could do that, right? Okay. And we are almost at the part where we're going to hit stop on the recording because I want you folks to start doing the next part. Okay, so let's see what the next slide was, just make sure I got it right. Right, our area to start with. Okay, Post-it notes or writing on your sheets of paper to start with. If you think of components that are related to the area that one of the areas that you said was important. Obviously, I'm going to have you start with the one that you listed as highest bang for your buck. We've got a couple minutes. Go ahead and work on the other ones too. Components are kind of anything, right? So if I said, if my area was something about an IT policy, my components might be different parts of an IT policy. It might be something about the stakeholder group or a governance group that might have some feedback on it. Might have to do with laws that are passed down by the legislature, something like that. If it's a physical product, of course, you can think of all of the stuff like I did with the toast, where there's these different pieces that need to happen. It could be a thing that transforms it, right? So you have raw data, and there's an action that adds value to that data. So components are kind of wide open or kind of anything. But I want you to write down somewhere between 3 and maybe 10 components. And then we're going to do this again, put them on Post-it notes. The cool part about being in a room with awesome whiteboards, not the fabric part, but awesome whiteboards. If you want to, you can do this at your table, or we can go up to whiteboards and put them up there and do the same basic process I had before, which is that we put them in a row, what we think the order is, and then we start moving stuff around for what's evolved or custom. So I think this is the part where we stop the recording though. That's cool.